we have been played by our ruling elites, our political leaders. It is painful to read and remember, but dangerous to ignore. Welcome to another episode of Gray Matter, and a special welcome to our new friends on Merit TV in the United States and Canada. Well, it seems as though every day that goes by, a new story breaks, making it more and more clear that just about all of the misinformation, disinformation, and outright lies were not being perpetrated by the people who were opposing what the government was saying and doing, or what mass media was saying and doing, but was actually being perpetrated by the people who were there to help us and to give us the truth. One of the people who's been there from the very beginning on the front lines in terms of fighting all of this is John Carpay of the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. And he's here today to talk about a new book that he has published. It's called Corrupted by Fear: How the Charter Was Betrayed and What Canadians Can Do About It. It was released very recently as an ebook, and it's available on Amazon. We're going to provide all the links so you can get the book. But John, welcome to Gray Matter. I'm looking forward to this conversation about your book.
I'm glad to be with you, Leighton.
Great. So before we go ahead and introduce him properly, as we always do, we've got some framing aphorisms, but I thought instead of quoting from things that are sort of abstract, that we'd actually cite some of the incredible comments that are coming through about this book. One of them is from Moyen Yeha, who is a professor of law at the faculty at the University of Alberta, has said about John's book, this is a first of its kind book that critically and systematically examines the COVID era in Canada, when policies seem to have been driven by fear instead of rational and scientific planning. And that's sort of the thesis of John's book. Anyone who cares about the relationship between the state and its citizens should read this book. John Carpay provides a clear and cogent analysis of the legal challenges Canada faced for almost 2 years and presents ideas on how to be better prepared for the next fear-driven crisis. Another one from John Robson, who's an academic, an author, and executive director of the Climate Discussion Nexus, wrote this about the book. He said, "Corrupted by Fear is an infuriating book, not because the author is wrong, but because he's right about the disastrous and self-satisfied way Canada's governing institutions, and especially the judiciary, failed us over COVID lockdowns. It is painful to read and remember, but dangerous to ignore." And from Bruce Party, a friend of the show, who has been on this program, for my money, one of the top legal scholars in Canada, he wrote this. He said, "Many Canadians appear to believe that their governments are benevolent, that they act in good faith, and that they have the best interests of the people and the country at heart. COVID taught us that this belief is false. COVID's bitter lesson is that we have been played by our ruling elites, our political leaders, our technocrats, our academics, and especially our legal profession. Corrupted by Fear is a damning indictment of Canada's polite society and the chattering classes who run it." He's could really turn a phrase, that man. And in case you're wondering what I think about the book, which I've read, and John was kind enough to send me a copy of the book, I wrote this. I said, "John Carpay was and is a tirelessly courageous voice against the tyranny of government COVID measures during the pandemic. He has now produced a riveting and well-documented explanation of what happened, why it happened, and most importantly, how we can prevent it from ever happening again. Corrupted by Fear is a must-read for every Canadian who cherishes liberty, the rule of law, and honoring the promises made to all Canadians by the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms." Well, who is John? Well, John is a Canadian lawyer and the founder and president of the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, or JCCF. This is a Calgary-based organization established in 2010. Hard to believe, 15 years ago. Born in the Netherlands, he grew up in BC and holds a BA in political science from Laval University in Quebec City and a law degree from the University of Calgary. John is fluent in English, French, and Dutch. He was called to the bar in 1999. Before founding the JCCF, he worked in civil litigation and served as the Alberta director of Canadian Taxpayers Federation from 2001 to 2005, and there he advocated for lower taxes and accountable government. He's also been involved in politics, running as a candidate for the Federal Reform Party back in 1993 and the Provincial Wildrose Party in 2012, and he's a member of Alberta's United Conservative Party. But, through JCCF, John has focused on defending constitutional freedoms such as freedom of expression, religion and association, often through litigation and public education. His efforts have included representing clients in high-profile cases, such as challenges to COVID-19, public health restrictions, support for churches and opposing lockdowns, and advocacy for individuals in disputes over license plates and campus free speech. So a very broad range of work that John is involved in through the JCCF. In 2010, he received the Pyramid Award for Ideas in Public Policy for his work in constitutional advocacy. So, John, with all of that, catching my breath with that long introduction, hopefully you're still awake. We want to talk about the book, but I thought as kind of a segue into that, if you wouldn't mind, you wrote a really interesting piece recently entitled A Glaring Double Standard. This was published, I think, about a week ago, talking about what's happening with the investigation and determination of deaths from COVID. I wonder if you wouldn't mind talking about that piece a little bit before we dive into your book.
Well, you see a lot of big COVID numbers in the news because we're in mid-March, so we're right around the 5th anniversary of lockdowns, which in a lot of places was March 15th, but 13th, 16th, whatever. We're at the 5-year anniversary, and I'm of lockdowns, and I'm reading some of these different analyses. Everybody's stepping up to the plate with their, what can we learn, and 5th anniversary. So a lot of interesting things to read. But you see these high. This morning I was reading, 55,000 Canadians died of COVID. Another estimate cited in the media: 65,000 Canadians died of COVID. And the truth is, the number is a lot lower than that, because what the governments did in 2020 was they used PCR testing to come up with numbers of COVID cases, COVID deaths, COVID hospitalizations. And the PCR test cannot and does not diagnose COVID. That's not a conspiracy theory. You can find it on the website of Health Canada, provincial public health agencies. The PCR test can detect a remnant of a virus in your body, whether it's COVID or staph infection or whatever. It doesn't tell you if you're sick or not. And so in one of our court cases that's referenced in the book, we had a Manitoba government official in the court proceedings admit under oath that when the Manitoba government was saying that there was 1,000 new COVID cases, in fact, they knew that at least 400 of those 1,000 people were not sick with COVID, not spreading COVID, and yet they were still ordered to quarantine. So we had this daily fear-mongering using PCR testing, which does not diagnose COVID disease. And combine that with a change in 2020, April, the World Health Organization adopted a new cause of death classification protocol. In a nutshell, prior in 2019 and years prior, if you were terminally ill with cancer, and if you got a really bad flu and the flu pushed you over the edge and killed you, for government statistics purposes, your death would be recorded as a cancer death, not a flu death. In 2020, and again, not a conspiracy theory, you can find this on the World Health Organization's own website. In April 2020, the World Health Organization said, well, for counting COVID deaths, if you are terminally ill with cancer, but if a PCR test finds a COVID viral remnant in your body, and then when you die, it's counted as a COVID death. And unless you got killed in a car accident, although even then, we'll still do a PCR test. And if we find COVID in your body, it's a COVID death. So they bent over backwards to get as many COVID deaths as possible. And the double standard is that with the vaccine, it's just the opposite approach.